This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
All right, it is 6 o'clock. I will now call to order the May 23rd, 2022 meeting of the Easthampton Conservation Commission. This meeting is being conducted in person and simultaneously being remote participation online to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found below. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the City of Easthampton's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Should an interruption occur in which the online meeting ends abruptly, both the in-person and online meetings will not be restarted, and all agenda items will be automatically continued to the next scheduled meeting. Are there any public concerns or non-agenda items?
I've not received any. I don't know if anyone's here for an item that's not on the agenda. Or...
All right, excellent. Moving on to public hearings, we have two this evening. The first is continued from May 9th, a request for determination of applicability filed by John Lucido at 63 Strong Street, map 173, lot 1, for installation of a new deck.
So we continued so that I could take some time to submit some photographs of the brook behind the house so we could determine whether it was an intermittent brook.
Before you get too far in, can I just ask you to reintroduce yourself for the record?
Oh, I'm John Lucido.
Thank you.
63 Strong Street.
There's the pictures on top there. Thank you.
Right. So I took a photo the night I left the meeting, and then 4 days after that, and then I also sent one a few days, maybe a week after that, and then I sent one today as well. Oh, I sent one after it rained, so that it doesn't run after it rains even, unless it rains for, 20 hours or something.
Here's my reflection from the last meeting was that the commission wanted to determine if it could be designated as a, they're trying to determine if it had riverfront area associated with it, or this part of the stream, or if it would be, that's not the case. It needs to be overcome based off of this evidence. Make sure everyone can see this at home. So this image is the 10th of May. It's from the 11th, the 12th, and the 17th. And then you sent me one today, which is also dry. I can pull that up here. Today. Really close. Okay. Let me know if you want to go back to any pictures or anything else.
I think that confirms that we can consider it intermittent.
Sure.
So that simplifies things in terms of resource areas.
Question for my education.
Sure.
Is there a working definition of what qualifies a stream as intermittent?
There is a formal definition in the regs, which we can pull up and revisit. So as we were discussing at the last meeting, the regs define a stream as a body of running water, including brooks and creeks, which move in a definite channel in the ground due to a hydraulic gradient and which flows within, into, or out of an area subject to protection under MGL C 13140. A portion of a stream may flow through a culvert or beneath a bridge. Such a body of water which does not flow throughout the year, i.e. which is intermittent, is a stream except for that portion upgrading of all bogs, swamps, wet meadows, and marshes. And then the definition of perennial streams is based on a stream that is shown as perennial on the current United States Geological Survey map, a river or stream shown as intermittent or not shown on the current USGS map is that has a watershed size greater than or equal to 1 square mile is perennial. A stream that's shown as intermittent or not shown but has a watershed less than 1 square mile is intermittent unless the watershed size is at least a half square mile and it has a predicted flow rate greater than or equal to 0.01 cubic feet per second at the 99% flow duration using the USGS StreamStats method. And when the USGS method cannot be used because the stream does not have a mapped and digitized center line, then there's some additional qualifications related to stratified drift that I think do not apply here. But notwithstanding all of that, and that's where we get to, in this case, the issuing authority shall find that any stream is intermittent based upon a documented field observation that the stream is not flowing. And a documented field observation shall be made by a competent source and based upon an observation made at least once per day over 4 days in any consecutive 12-month period during a non-drought period on a stream not significantly affected by drawdown from withdrawals of water supply wells, direct withdrawals, impoundments, or other human-made flow reductions or diversions.
Thank you. Got it.
Thank you.
A lot of language.
Now read it back to us.
There will be a quiz.
All that being said, my only other question is, I'm diligently seeking these folks that do these helical piers because I want to be able to cause the least amount of environmental impact. It has proved to be challenging because it is steep. The hill is steep. It's hard to see in some of the pictures, but it isn't super easy to get the machine back there to drill the ones, some of them across in the back. Even though the machines are pretty small, they're heavy. So I guess my question is if I have to do some of them, at least some of them with concrete, what I would require from Conservation Commission as far as silt fence to assure that.
Can we see the drawing again?
Yeah, you sent me a new drawing.
So I sent the architectural drawing today. He just finished it.
And if we can go, I don't know.
And I can also show you the, did you have a digital copy of? Bucky's?
Better good.
Oh,
Yes, I've got one here.
that gives you a little bit more of an idea of how it sits. And then the brook is here. And this is the deck here.
Right.
And how many feet is it from the brook?
So the closest pier to the brook would right here is 40.
Right.
But the deck is about 16 feet above the brook. And that's the challenge, that there's a hill like this.
Mhm.
So the piers go here. So he can't drive his machine up there and he can't come up from here for some of them.
So we've established that there's not an applicable riverfront area. We're in buffer zone.
The piers don't have any impact, correct?
Right.
But if he digs something by hand, now does he have impact?
Did you actually talk to the people who put in those
Several.
spiral layers? And they said they don't think they can get down there.
Right, and it's hard to get them to site visit, so they want to just come and do it. And I did have one person come for a site visit, and his suggestion was that I build the deck and temporarily support it, and he'll drive his machine out on the deck and drive the piers in from the deck.
It's a creative solution.
It is, but it's a lot of extra work, right? Because then I have to actually install it and support it temporarily,
Right.
and then move the load carrying beam out to the position where it's actually going to go.
Mhm.
So it sounds a little sketchy, dangerous, perhaps, because you're also not standing on flat ground when you do this work. You're on this hill that you're trying not to erode and
Right.
bring down.
So we had already established, I believe, Cassie, correct me if I'm wrong, that if we were not in riverfront, that we were not in any resource areas, correct?
Yeah, it would just be.
Just the buffer zone. Okay. So I think even if you were if you were to need to dig, would you use sonotubes? Would you be pouring any concrete, or would you be using established, just dropping in an existing
We would be pouring concrete.
precast? You would be.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what does that mean when you say it's a buffer zone? That's different from a riverfront.
Yes, so riverfront is a resource area in its own right. Buffer zone is the sort of, it's the buffer. It's an area that it doesn't have its own resource area protective status, but it's still considered important because it is what protects the resource area, essentially. So there are more things that are permissible in a buffer zone and less specific standards that you have to meet. So I think as long as we're able to establish appropriate erosion controls and make sure that no concrete or anything else is going to make its way into the resource
So-
area, this should be fine.
Right, and that's, so if you wouldn't mind pulling up the picture that you took of, from the meadow, you took a shot that has the meadow and the brook and the deck, like the barn. So that being said, what I'm able to do is, actually, it almost shows it there. The hill comes along and it actually, so this is flat. This is what I'm getting at. There's about a 20-foot flat area at the bottom where I can put, okay, right here.
Yep.
So let me just show you this. So the deck's here, comes out 11 feet. The piers are at 8.6. Okay, and then see this? The brook is here. So I can put the silt fence here. That way it would be capturing everything that happens from here. So I could do, 60 feet across. So it isn't really, the brook isn't, in case you were thinking, the brook isn't right there. It's out about 20, 25 feet.
So does the erosion control have to go all the way around? Because he's doing, deck is going all the way around, so not just straight across.
Right, so it comes across the side here and then the
Yeah.
other side here. But anything that was up here is gonna flow down the hill here. It won't go, in other words, it's flat. This is a plateau here and on the other side.
Yeah, that was a better picture.
So yeah, there you go.
You kind of see where it's.
So the plateau here, so the other piers would be here. And then actually close to the building because it's only 6 feet on the side, and then back in there at 8 and 16.
So I would envision an erosion control that would sort of wrap around the base of the
Wrap a
hill.
little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Just come like this,
Sure.
Mhm. Okay?
And I don't know what other commissioners think. I don't think that digging to tow in a silt fence would be appropriate here. I think if we just had a straw
Correct.
wattle.
Right.
So to minimize disturbance, rather than having you dig in a silt fence, I think if we just
Staking
lay a straw wattle
staking
down
a
and
straw
stake it
wattle.
every couple of feet to make sure that it's secure, that should be sufficient. During construction and until everything is, any disturbed soil is stabilized.
Yeah, I don't really know where you
Just
get the water.
for
With any question?
my education, the buffer zone, is it normally
Yeah.
100 feet?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are there any other comments or questions from the commission?
So we're okay with it as far as shading, the coming out as far as it is, the 6 feet.
I think we decided that if it wasn't riverfront area, we're not gonna have shade that's going to extend and change anything beyond what the house is already doing. I don't think we're gonna change any actual resource areas, so we should be fine.
It seems like it's on piers where light could still get underneath and maintain some
Okay.
vegetation.
Yeah, so back at the actual building, we're talking about 4 feet. But where it ends, it'll be about, on the average, about 8 to 10 feet off the ground. So the sun will still come in there. And the growth does go up, within about 5-6 feet from the building.
And so in this case, the whole house already is in the buffer zone, right?
Correct.
So it would have already been approved, the house would have already been approved previously.
That would depend very much on the age of the house. It may
was when I
predate.
pulled the original building permit. I have
Okay.
the signature from the Conservation Commission that when I pulled the original building permit, which lasted a long time because it was a project. It wasn't really an apartment at that point. And then I pulled a new building permit.
Kathy, do you have the form for us? It's here, isn't it?
Yeah.
So would somebody care to make a motion?
So it should be a negative determination number 3, that we should have a silt fence, a straw wattle added.
Which one is 3?
The work described in the request is within buffer zone as defined in the regulations, but will not alter areas subject to protection under the act. Therefore, does not require the filing of a notice of intent. Subject to the following conditions would be a straw wattle that wraps around the property.
That's appropriate to me if others agree.
I want to read it just
Sure.
because I'm trying to educate myself. Whenever you're done. Yeah,
Are there any other conditions that we'd want to add on? I think last week we probably mentioned the standard 24 or 48 hour
48-hour notice.
notice.
We're doing 2 or 3.
It's usually 3 if there's a condition.
Okay.
A 2 would be no condition.
Do we have a motion?
I made the motion.
Do we have a second? All those in favor, roll call vote. Oh boy, I'm not gonna get your, all right, so Commissioner Weeks?
Aye.
Last name? Carr, Commissioner Carr?
yeah.
Commissioner August?
Aye.
Commissioner Whittemore?
Aye.
And Commissioner Ryan?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. So Kathy, we can go ahead and sign this right now, correct?
Yeah, so sign it, get your pens and all, and then whenever you're done, it's all right, I'm gonna photocopy it right now, and then I'll give you a copy, and then. Right, yeah.
And I can-
Yeah, so, I'll just basically, the conditions are installing this straw bottle by taking it in and out, have to keep those in the cabin into the backpack. And then, 48 hours before you get started, reach out to me. And I'll take a look and be like, yep, look, this bottle's in,
Got it.
Julie, could you write those in those conditions?
I will.
Thank you. No, I can scan it.
What was that? Oh, okay.
Yes.
I bought it, but
Go to the conference? Yeah.
I think there might be some other line systems filled out. On the front page.
Possibly. I'll take a look. There might be date issued. I'll take a look.
I don't know if this is official or not, but in other meetings, all the commissioners or attendants were present. We were not doing roll call votes anymore. We were just doing all in favor.
I don't know if it's required because it's hybrid. Because that was the point of it
This was
before.
a hybrid meeting, but because of all the people voting
Yeah.
were in the room,
Yeah.
that was all. But we can find out officially.
Yeah, who do we need to ask about that?
I'll try to look for example.
Okay. It'd be nice if we didn't have to remember last names on the spot. It's always a little bit of a challenge,
You did get that.
especially the new ones.
The vice chair committee, we just took on no favor, say aye.
Yeah,
Are you all doing hybrid meetings or are they in person? That's what I want to know.
We were, it was all hybrid, or it was all online.
Yep.
Now it's all in person,
Gotcha.
because they haven't figured out I guess upstairs, they don't have the setup to do it hybrid yet.
I haven't come up with the quick newsletter.
Let me see.
Oops, sorry.
That's okay. I just want to put this something.
I think we need the date still probably.
Okay, class file.
This wasn't during the hybrid meeting, but all the people were present. So,
Yeah.
but we'll find out for sure.
So
You hate to get in trouble.
I get in trouble on my first night.
Yeah.
You get fired first
We're
night.
gonna play by the rules here.
Okay.
Say this again?
Dan isn't present.
Correct, but all the members that are voting were present.
Oh, okay.
So even if there was, like at that meeting I was at, one person was absent, one member was absent, but because all the members that were voting were present,
Okay.
we didn't.
I thought you
roll
meant
call.
everybody.
No, no,
Okay.
just whoever's voting.
Can you give me the password for the line?
Stay in school, don't be a fool.
I think it only took me like 4 years to actually get that plugged into my phone, so it connects automatically.
As your champion.
I'm not gonna open those because you're gonna make me eat the whole thing again.
Yeah.
You want to open it? Yeah.
Did you have time for dinner tonight?
No.
No. Child proof.
Childproof.
You're doing it. Pause. Go
Doing
ahead.
well until you open them.
Okay, that'd be great. Okay, all right. Thank you very much for your time,
Thank
all
you.
3 times, and appreciate it.
All right.
Happy
Thank you, Chair.
All right, our next item is a request for determination of applicability filed by Heritage Land Surveying and Engineering on behalf of Our Lady of the Valley at 109 Everett Street, map 146, lot 1, for expansion of the existing cemetery. Do we have someone here to speak for that matter?
My name is Mark Reed from Heritage Land Surveying and Engineering.
And Lisa Markowitz from Heritage as well.
So I don't know if I should cover that with a set of plans or.
We'll do that.
Looks like, looks like to get a speaker out of the way.
Yeah, right, yeah. Right. That's what I meant, Jay.
Oh, sure.
So, on behalf of Our Lady of the Valley Church, we have filed the request for a determination of applicability to expand the St. Bridget's Cemetery on Everett Street. The commission confirmed the wetland boundaries previously for the site, and the church has since purchased the property and would like to expand the cemetery over a period of time. I need to, one thing. Wait. So the existing St. Bridget's Cemetery is located in this section. The proposal is there was a single-family house on this particular piece of property that came back and was large, with the lower mill pond wrapping around 2 sides of it. The majority of the work is outside of the 100-foot buffer zone for the project in itself. But we do have work within the 50 to 100-foot buffer zone, which we're proposing. And additional tree cutting to allow for some grave sites to be put in. And these grave sites are probably going to be put in over the next 100 years. This cemetery here is over 100 years old and it's still not 100% full, which is a good thing in a lot of aspects. So that we have, and this colored rendering here is, you can see the 100-foot buffer zone line coming around this section here. It would being proposed to install a 16-foot wide access roadway with a cul-de-sac at the end of it so that people can drive in here and wrap around. There's a small parking area, which is outside the 100-foot buffer zone, that would lead to a chapel, similar to the one off of Northampton Street, which is, again, outside the 100-foot buffer zone. Because of the amount of disturbance, we also filed under the stormwater management ordinance in town. And so it's, because we're filing with you, it's under your review and approval in conjunction with Dan Murphy, the city engineer. So with that, and switch to the site plan itself. It has a little bit more detail as far as the stormwater system in here. So that you can see that these are a series of grave plots that are 3 foot wide, 10 foot wide, 3 foot wide, 10 foot long. So they will run kind of parallel to Everett Street, as you can see here. We have no work within the 50-foot buffer zone being proposed. We have a water quality swale grass channel that will take any of the stormwater that comes off of the pavement area from the driveway itself. I'm calling it a driveway because it's really not a roadway, it's or a road, you know. Going into an infiltration basin. For this section, we have another grass channel and swale going into another infiltration basin here, and one for the cul-de-sac area. So that all gets collected from the impervious surfaces into the 3 infiltration basins themselves.
And then what happens to that water? Like
So-
the infiltration basin.
So they're allowed for the stormwater to infiltrate into the ground.
They just hold it.
Yep. And then after a storm event, it percolates into the ground for that. They have been sized. So for each one of the storm events, to have no additional runoff from the site in volume. And that was a question from the city engineer, which we provided some information to him and to Cassie, which I think is in your packet.
Any test pits done for that?
Yes, yeah, I did test pits throughout the whole
I
site.
just didn't see it marked, that's all.
It's on the existing conditions plan.
Okay.
What should be here? Right here, Jay. So I did test pits. There's one here, one here, one here, one here, one here. So we did test pits around.
What about at your actual infiltration points?
Because they're in the wooded area section, this is the closest one to the infiltration area. We did not do, because here's the edge of the existing tree line. We didn't want to get down into the tree line and do any disturbance. For this basin here, we have one in the cul-de-sac area for that. As mentioned, the church would like to be able to build the roadway and the stormwater system and have in the chapel and have all this work completed up front. There's an existing driveway that comes in off of Everett Street that currently is there to facilitate the existing house. That's going to be removed to reduce the amount of impervious along that section. And a little bit additional pavement area here because they're going to use the garage as their maintenance facility or building. And
So
so
you do the roadway, you can take all the trees out that are proposed in the whole plan.
up to the 50 foot. Correct. Correct. As far as the grave sites that are in the buffer zone, it's kind of unique the way, it's not unique. Whenever they dig a grave plot, they always take the sod and cut it out and set it aside. So within a day's time after the burial, they put it back. You can hardly tell that there was any digging going on because they don't want to have a bunch of dead dirt areas and so forth. So it's really, it's a little bit invasive for a day while they dig the grave site. There's a concrete vault, and then of course the casket inside the vault. And then after that, the staff from the cemetery relay the sod and stabilize everything for it, so that as far as the individual grave sites, it's going to take quite some time to develop or to sell plots. So that I know that the determination of applicability would be valid for a 3-year period with potential for extensions. They want to try to get all the infiltration, the stormwater system and roadways and the chapel done, so the commission can issue a condition or approval with an ongoing condition for grave sites.
So is the only thing that's in the buffer zone the burial plot?
So, yeah, so you can see in the buffer zone themselves, there are some, and here, for instance, there's some burial plots
Yeah.
here. This area right in here is a little bit of the stormwater system. The buffer zone then continues here. We have a little bit of a chapel garden area within the buffer zone. Very little area here. And then grave plots, a little bit of the stormwater system. Getting back here, this stormwater system or basin is about halfway into the buffer zone. And then just a little bit of the cul-de-sac. Here it comes around and back around is, majority of these are in the buffer zone. Just touching here, the buffer zone comes down and back around here. So you got some spots, grave plots on this side of it. Along here, you have these plots that are in it, and a little bit of the pavement area near the garage that's there.
And what's the roadway made out of?
Bituminous concrete pavement. It'd be asphalt. Yes.
You guys ever use the concrete that water can go, there's some kind of concrete now water can go through? Get what it's called.
Pervious.
Impervious pavement, something.
Yeah, impervious
Something.
pavement.
Yeah, it's very costly for one. And, the majority of the pavements outside the buffer zone. And they feel for longevity of it, it's best to have, blacktop, bituminous pavement to it.
Margaret asked this because we ran into this on the neighboring property with the existing cemetery. What is the long-term plan for dealing with any spoils and leftover material that's removed when they're digging the grave holes?
So any leftover material will be placed outside of the buffer zone. I know that in the past they had some issues back here, which they've rectified that.
Mhm.
And if need be, removed from the site.
Okay.
Altogether.
But it was plant material also. It was,
Right.
it was soils and plant
Right.
materials.
Correct. And which they've stopped doing that. It was behind this little garage here. In there.
And how close are the outside edges of the infiltration basins to where the slope gets steep? What's the distance there?
It's not, okay, so these are the, contour intervals. We're just tucking into this. The steep slope is way down here.
Yeah, so what's that distance?
So that distance is, I got my scale. This is a 20, 30, right?
30, I'd say 30 per inch.
So from this basin here, from the limit of work line, which is right here, to the top of the slope is 30 feet. This one is 20 feet, and this one's the closest, which is about 5 feet from this finger that comes up.
Have you had anyone look at the potential for stability issues or breakout being that close to the slope?
We did look at that and feel that, the soils are suitable and we won't have any issue to that. Especially because we're going to maintain all the vegetated buffer through there.
Is there runoff already occurring into this little valley?
Yeah, I mean the whole property, here's kind of, this goes this way. There's a little bit of a high point here. You can see in the contours, some of the, about from here, it goes over this way. This goes that way. This goes towards the point.
So there might be a natural want to make that gully bigger, that's all.
Yeah.
During construction.
Do you want a demarcation line, like a boundary line,
Like monuments or something?
Yes.
Or-
stones or something? Right along the edge. at the end of where they want to finish doing the grave sites.
It's kind of a curvy, boundary.
And each one of the way they lay out these grave sites is they're marked on all corners of them so that they know when they go to dig, people buy a site and they buy a particular plot, where these actually are. So
Do you know what they mark them with?
I don't know for sure. But I know they do mark them.
Do the concrete vaults they built, that are going into the buffer zone, is that also a potential to cause erosion because they're removing soil to put the concrete vault in? Or am I not?
No, because what they dig the grave, they set the vault in, they backfill around the vault because during the cemetery or during a burial, people go right up to the vault. And then after the burial, they put the cover on it. There's a concrete cover on the vault, backfill it and put the sod back on it.
And take away whatever extra.
Correct. Material there is. So it's, it's disturbance of that anywhere, whether it's in the buffer zone or not, for about a day's time. After a burial, it's immediately restored.
Well, I'm the newbie here, so I don't,
That's
I'm
fine. No,
claim ignorance,
that's fine.
but
It's
I was just imagining if there were all these concrete vaults being put in here, that all that soil is being replaced by concrete where the vaults are going, that could destabilize the
Well,
ground.
look, the vaults are very heavy, so they're probably more stable than the soils.
That's what I
there,
was not
right,
sure about,
right.
yeah.
Right.
So for the benefit of our two new commissioners, we have two different things at stake here, really. We have the RDA, the Request for Determination of Applicability, which is under the Wetlands Protection Act. And because the commission is acting on this project for any reason, we also then become the jurisdictional body for the stormwater permit for the city. So the stormwater permit can either be us or the planning board. Whenever we have jurisdiction over the project for some other reason, such as the RDA, the jurisdiction for the stormwater permit becomes ours. So there's two different things we need to work out. So I think and I'm not entirely sure how that works in this case. I don't know, Cassie or Jay, if you do, because we're not actually issuing a permit in the same way if we are doing an RDA as if we were doing an NOI. So would we have a separate stormwater permit?
Yes.
So
Yes.
we have, a lot of the times when we do an order of conditions, the city stormwater permit will be an attachment to the order of conditions. In this instance, it's just
It would stand
RDA.
alone.
We could reference it in the RDA as well. I think the probably time I do that. And then, yeah, I would issue a standalone stormwater permit.
We make two motions, right?
Yeah.
One for the permit and one for the RDA.
Okay. So I would recommend, since we don't have Dan here tonight, and
Yeah.
he is our stormwater expert, that we put at least that piece on hold. But we can explore any other questions or comments that we might have with regards to the RDA tonight and try to, I don't know if it makes sense to vote on one or maybe to hold them both and do the votes together.
Well, you can't go forward with just half anyways.
No, right.
So-
Yeah, so it doesn't,
Right.
yeah.
So hold off on the
So maybe
stormwater.
we'll hold off on the votes, but
Sure.
are there any other questions or comments, anything we're gonna want clarification on with regards to, well, I guess with regards to either one, but especially the RDA?
Would there be a concern about tree removal? Like how many trees, what kind of trees? And will you be then replanting to make up in the area?
So
Because you were
so
saying,
the majority of the trees are oak trees in that area.
okay,
That's predominantly the species out there. So that we're not, because we need the space for the grave plots, we're not proposing to plant new trees. There is some plantings
Plantings around that.
around the chapel
Or
garden. Correct. Or-
Native
Yes.
plantings.
And there's a plant list on here. Oops, right here. They're all, so there is a series of shrubs and plants within the site itself being planted, not only around the stormwater basins, but around the chapel garden area, which would be maintained by the church. We do have some existing trees that we're going to save within the middle section of the property that are shown on the plan to try to minimize that. We do have some trees in the front of the property that are being proposed to be planted. And they are the PAs. So there are Norway spruces being proposed to be planted in this section in here.
Good question. I'm not a commissioner, but I'm looking at my map and I'm trying to figure out, so I'm looking at this, and I'm
Yep.
trying to figure out where that fits in here. Is that just this area here, or is that the whole area?
So
This edge right here, that's
Is-
right
is
here,
right here.
okay.
And then this doesn't show the little finger of wetlands that comes here. So this,
So I would just like cut that off, right?
Yep.
Be like that?
Yep.
That's what we're showing.
Okay,
Okay.
sorry. Can I get
Thank
your
you.
name for the record? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure, Donna Chapello.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
I live in Eastworks.
Do you have a sense, Mark, of the number of trees that will need to be removed? Or the number
I asked them,
over a certain?
So we did not count the trees. It's not a real thick, but Cassie, you took some pictures, right?
Share the site visit photos to all the
Yeah,
time.
right. That shows the site and pictures.
So the gardens won't get into any of the bordering vegetative wetlands.
Correct. There is no work between the wetland boundary and the 50-foot. So there's a 50-foot undisturbed buffer.
And so the trees at that point, you're saying, are no longer bordering vegetative wetland
They're-
species.
They're in the buffer zone. Well, oaks are not a wetland
Right.
species.
Sort of
One thing that happened
Confirming.
before you were on the commission was they came to get what's called an ANRAD, which is abbreviated notice of resource area delineation. And so they came just to get the commission to confirm where the wetlands start and
Yeah.
stop. So that happened at a previous meeting before you were here. So, that kind of conforms.
So this is looking towards the back of the property. This tree line here, over here, is some of the trees that we're going to save in this area. For that, so, okay. For relationship. That was the soils or the test pit, which is, this test pit is up here. Actually, we're way up near front, looking towards the back.
This is looking away from the existing cemetery towards that little finger of Lower Mill Pond. This is the street, Everett Street right here. And then, the finger of Lower Mill Pond being to the left there, the existing cemetery behind me. This is part of that little existing driveway, and then if you can see a little bit of the existing building. This is where the road, the new driveway is gonna go. It's
Yes.
here.
So where the vehicles are parked is right where the new roadway would go.
And then just beyond where these cars are is the existing driveway. Now, he's standing where one of the infiltration basins is gonna go.
Right.
Very helpful.
So that one is right here. This basin here.
I think it got closer too,
Yeah, right.
so you can see it's kind of on the edge of it.
So there are a number of trees that need to come down. But again, this is kind of like at the top of the slope. You were asking about that, the actual top.
And just looking down along Everett Street is beyond that. Looking back up. Everett Street will be behind us now. I believe this one.
Yeah, so that I think is at the last one, the third one, up near the cul-de-sac. Yes,
You can see the pond in the background here.
Yep.
That corner.
Yep.
Put it down.
So are there any are those wetland plants where he
No.
is? No,
there's just,
no wetland.
no, there's no wetland plants up in there. No, it's all oaks and, so with that last picture, Bill was standing right here at that spot.
Did you encounter any invasive?
Luckily, no.
Any what? Invasives?
Right. The previous owner of the property maintained it. He grew up there and he maintained it. You can see, he mowed it and kind of at some time in the past, he used to burn wood in the house. So he used to take all the dead stuff down and burn it.
So again, forgive my ignorance if this is a stupid question, but is an alternative to make the burial, like, this obviously is more than one burial plot, right? This is,
Yes.
so is there any alternative been considered to just do fewer burial plots that you don't go into the buffer zone?
Well, the church is trying to have the vision of the next 100 years.
Lots
To
of dead
have as
people.
many as possible, to be prepared, I guess, the best way. They spent money to purchase the property and money to develop the cemetery. If each one of these burial plots are not a moneymaker by any means. You don't get thousands and thousands of dollars for a burial plot to offset your expenses.
Because you were saying that the cost of the plot helps retain the movement together?
Correct. So basically about 50% of the cost of a burial plot is set aside in an account for maintenance for the next 100 years. And then they take the other 50% and try to use that for developing the cemetery.
Perhaps more relevant, though, is that if the activities in buffer zone are not going to impact the resource areas, we don't really have the jurisdiction to suggest that they do something different as their activity. So if we don't see an impact to the resource area down here, then that's kind of where our jurisdiction ends there. There aren't specific performance standards for buffer zone.
And that's why we wanted to make sure that we kept the minimum of 50 feet away from the resource areas. For instance, along this whole edge here, you can see we maintained a large flat area so that we're not, we could have gone further, but we didn't want to maintain any potential erosion going over these steep embankments. Same around here, you can see it, it does slope down, but it's not dramatic, like closer the lines are together, the steeper it is.
Yeah.
So.
Are there other questions, concerns from the commission? Mark, I think since we're going to be coming back to talk in more detail about the stormwater system,
Yep.
I would be interested in knowing more about the soils in these basins, even if it's just hand digging.
Okay.
To get some information.
Sure.
I do have some concerns, and I suspect that Dan will as well, with the potential for breakout, especially at the third one that's really close to the steep area of the slope.
Sure.
And yeah, I think that's the main thing that
Yeah, that
I
sounds
think
good.
we'll probably be looking
Sure.
for.
We can do that.
Are there any other questions or comments from the public? Okay.
I don't know if Dan Murphy sent
Yeah,
something to the commission also.
yep, so I don't,
We've been in conversation with Dan to make sure that he's.
Great.
so.
Is the bond amount been determined?
We've got the bond amount from him.
That's a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
So we promised The conclusion review of the site plan and stormwater calculation finally generally satisfactory. The model shows that the infiltration basins will contain and infiltrate both 2 and 10-year storm events, either into the ground or through the stone check jam. See the hashed area on the plan. During 100-year storm, the model estimates that 81% of the volume to contain and then infiltrate or pass through the stone check jam. And the bond amount that he supplied with a total of $22,861.
And within the stormwater report, we also did the drawdown for each one of the basins, so that we're meeting those standards for drawdown within the basins.
For the time to empty, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
That's right.
All right. Do we have a motion to continue?
A motion to continue to June 13th at 6 PM.
Do we have a second? Second. Roll call vote. Commissioner Weeks?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner August?
Aye.
Commissioner Whittemore?
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay.
We will see you on the 13th.
One thing is you emailed
Oh, sorry, what were you asking?
the signature. We had to get the bishop's signature,
Oh.
and Lisa's emailed that to you.
I don't have the original signature page, but I do have what they had sent me.
That seems good. Yeah, I didn't give you how to add. That's good.
I did.
Track down the bishop.
I know you did,
I
yeah.
know they required the bishop's signature, but we'll go with that.
Technically, the bishop
Who's the owner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to,
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to hold on to one of these.
Yes,
Yeah.
take that. That's a big copy. And anything, do you need these copies?
This is my stuff.
Anything that's yours, I don't need to take it, Bernie.
Keeping the big drawings.
And yeah, I'm gonna add information.
Yeah, Murphy. Yeah, great.
Yes. No, that's okay. We can print out one. Not a problem.
I can bring you the next one too.
Oh, is this the next folder?
Oh, yes, thank you.
And I think they're the next time anyway.
Yes.
All right. Moving on to request for certificate of compliance, 161 to 165 Northampton Street, Mass DEP file number 1510189 for mixed-use development with grading and drainage utilities, including 3 buildings and a parking area, map 114, lot 45.
Hey, come back up. Mark Reed from Heritage Land Surveying, and Lisa Narkowitz here also. This was a order of conditions that the Conservation Commission issued to Autumn Properties back in 2000. And when David Boyle was going through some of his records, he realized he never requested a certificate of compliance for the project. So if you're familiar with Northampton Street, heading out, this is Florence Road. It's kind of where Jay is sitting. Abashan Hardware is across the street. These are 3 white buildings. There's office space on the first floor and apartments on the second floor. So this is an as-built plan we prepared. This is the 100-foot buffer zone from the wetlands, which is in the rear of the property, through the original notice of intent and filings. There were 3 buildings being proposed, pavement, a stormwater basin, which there's some pictures of that in the looking at there for the property. We had a site visit the other day, last Tuesday,
Yeah, 17.
on the 17th. And everything has been stable for not quite 20 years, but since they built the construction, so past 18 years. So it is in compliance with the approved plans and order of conditions, subject to your approval of the certificate of compliance. It's the only outstanding issue that I could see in going through the order.
Nobody complains, tear it down.
A lot of people forget about getting a certificate of compliance, you know,
I'm
honestly,
going to sell something.
until they go to sell it, and then an attorney says, wait a minute.
Where was this property relative to where we had the enforcement order?
This is the same
Was
piece?
it the same piece?
Yes.
Okay.
So back here, there were previously, what, 2 years ago now?
2 or 3 or
3 years ago?
4?
Yeah, it was before COVID.
Yeah,
before
it's been
COVID.
a while.
Yeah. There was an enforcement order. The applicant's
Brother.
brother went through here and did some clearing that he shouldn't have been, trying to open up some pathways to provide some pathways for people who live there to go back into the wetlands. So that was resolved.
That order is officially closed
Closed.
out,
Yes,
correct?
It's
Kathy?
closed out and
Okay.
it's not on our agenda anymore.
Right. That was satisfied. But, yeah.
The stormwater basin, in the pictures that I have here, which granted are in black and white, there appears to be a lot of vegetation in there.
I can show you.
Yeah, so-
Like,
There is no woody vegetation in there. That's all. Right.
buildings, the big area. The big catch basin leading to. Leading up to it, that's the basin over there, the background. That's the catch, another catch basin.
Which have oil water separated them.
So there's, I have more pictures, and let me know when we carry on.
And you had said that was canary grass.
Yeah, there's a mixture of grasses in there. It is a wet bottom basin. There's no really woody growth in it. So there's a variety of species that are in there, grasses and ferns and you can kind of see the ferns on the upper edge.
Let me see, I don't know if any of the pictures got any closer.
Is there an
There you go.
O&M plan for the
Yes,
stormwater system?
yes.
Do we-
Not to the standard 20 years ago that we have today, but yes. It's in your order of conditions. I forget what item number that was.
Yeah, I think it just said it in the
Maintain.
order of conditions.
Right, shall be maintained.
Perpetuity conditions.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a color order.
Right, because I had asked you
Yeah, right.
about in perpetuity conditions and
Yes,
they
right.
didn't just ask that. Yeah.
Correct.
Basin, probably somewhere in there.
Right. And that would be an ongoing condition to the approval.
So one of the notes in here says a periodic removal of accumulated sediments becomes necessary to maintain design storage capacity of the basin. Conservation Commission should be requested to evaluate removal plans. What is the condition of?
Basin is in great shape.
Okay.
Because of the deep sumps in the catch basin and the hoods, there's virtually no sediment in the basin. And it is clean.
And it is draining, not storing water and holding?
Yes. So there is, and then there's a picture, there's an outlet structure. That's the outlet
From the catch basin.
from the basin itself, and nice and clean.
That was out.
That
from
was
the
to
catch
the
basin.
basin.
Oh, that was the catch basin,
Sorry,
okay,
yeah, this is the
okay,
inlet.
yeah. So that, yeah, that's the inlet. There's two of them in there.
This is the source of the outlet. And this is the outlet here. And then you can see, this is the outlet, yeah, up to this rocky area.
Some riprap.
It's hard to tell the pictures, but it just kind of carries on.
Once you go through the outlet and this riprap channel, that's a brook that goes next to Abishan Hardware. It goes through and goes through the industrial park. So that's all part of that resource area.
Were there any changes from the original plans?
No,
Who was on the site visit? Sounds like Deborah, you were there. Any other observations?
No, it was maintained. Um, Everything was clear. And I guess it's been like that for quite a while. And whatever is growing in there, like you said, it was some form of canary grass, seems contained. And same thing at that growing outside of that particular piece.
yeah,
Yeah.
actually, it's where the standing water is in the basin,
Yes.
is that grass.
Yeah.
And once you get out of there, then you get to the other plant species up the slope. That's really at the bottom of the basin.
So it does hold water,
Yes, it does.
and it was designed to do that?
Yep. It was at the bottom of it, the very bottom. And then during the heavy storm event, of course, it percolates down and then the overflow. When we were out there, there was what, maybe,
One of the pictures you can see a little bit, like kind of near the inlet, you can see a little water
a
there.
little bit of water, maybe 4 inches or something like that of water on the very bottom.
Do we have anything, this may be a test of your memory, would anything in the NOI document that it was intended to hold water? Because there is a condition that says it shall be free draining and not store water for prolonged periods of time after storm events. So there,
I think it doesn't hold water for a long period of time after a storm event.
had it just rained?
17th.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the pictures that John shared was for the 17th because it had rained the day before.
Okay.
And you can see, that's the outlet pipe. It's wet from the previous rain that we had. I think it was the day before, right?
I don't think so.
How much rain did we get?
I'll have to check that.
Yeah, I
Does
don't.
anybody remember?
It was one of those put down pours in the evening.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't had much, less than half an inch.
Do we think it would be worth checking again to make sure that it's draining within 2 days after a rain event?
2 months from now, we may have some rain scheduled the weekend-ish, but it doesn't look like it's going to be a washout.
a storm coming up in the next 2 days?
Thursday night to Friday.
Yeah, that's about it. I'm not sure
Yeah,
how
this
much.
week.
I think I'm more concerned with going out and documenting that it's dry so that we know that it is draining, which wouldn't necessarily have to be right after an event.
I'm willing to go before the rain, if that makes sense. That would be enough time. But to allow it.
We didn't get much of anything last night.
No.
Friday looks like a 1/4 inch.
Do you need a certain period of time?
Well, it's
Or,
supposed to drain within 48 hours after an event, or at least that's the current standard. I honestly don't know if that was the standard
No,
at this
it
point.
Back then, 20 years
Probably
ago,
not.
It wasn't the same standards as we have today. Yeah.
So I'm, since it was holding water when you were there, I'm more interested in just making sure that it's not doing that all the
And it's
time.
only the very bottom of it. Unfortunately, we didn't get a good picture of it, the very bottom. That's why the grasses are nice and green. It's not like it's
Something we want to
full.
look at before the next rain event and just take a quick look at it.
If you
Yeah,
go-
Kathy,
if you
would
go
you
back to
mind?
the outlet. So you can see, yeah.
This one right here?
So you can see how dry this is. This is the overflow pipe coming from it. So this is all dry before you get down to the actual bottom. So it doesn't, just is right at the bottom of the basin. And so this whole area is heavy, silty, loam, clay. Going through the whole industrial park, that whole brook channel going by Abshan is just nothing but silt clay.
Yep.
You know, and that's what, that was built, the land was the same way.
Yeah.
20 years ago, you know.
If it was a standard as tight 20 years ago as it is now, I don't, no idea.
No, probably not. But I don't, honestly, I don't.
But definitely take a look at it. I don't think that it's, you know, it doesn't, it's not a substantial amount of water in that it holds. It's, you know.
Kathy, did you just do another visit?
Yeah.
Are there any other questions from the commission? Comments or questions from the public? All right. Motion to continue?
Motion to continue to June 13th, 6 PM. Second.
All those in favor, roll call vote. Weeks? Clark?
Aye.
August?
I,
Whittemore?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Motion carries. We will see you on June 13th.
Okay, and I'll leave this plan with you so you can have a large copy.
Yeah, I'll reach out when I'm gonna do the site visit. I
Okay.
don't think you see it, it'll be quick. but
Yeah,
I'll
right.
know
Yeah, when you're
it's-
driving by,
Yeah,
fine, just pop in and
I can do
look at
that.
it, okay?
Yes.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
For quite a item out of order.
Item.
9B.
Right,
Motion to take 9B out of order.
All those in favor, Weeks?
Aye.
Clark?
Yeah.
August?
Aye.
Whittemore?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Motion carries. So item 9B, Westview Terrace preliminary review.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself for the record, please.
My name is Kelly Stedholm. And my father owns the property. And we were just curious about the, yeah, I'll work pictures here for you. Thank you. And if I could, can I give a little brief explanation?
Oh, please.
Position? Sorry, and then you guys can obviously explain more details. So you guys had reached out to me about, they have an access road that goes parallel to the bike path into their property on Westview Terrace. Pulling up pictures now. I did 2 site visits, one more recently and one a number of months ago. He had originally reached out to me about it. At the time, you know, it was determined these pictures are of the pipe itself that is to be removed, and it's pretty exposed. It's the area over the top has come away. Close pictures is really overgrown over there, but there's the water leading to the pipe that's conveying the water through their access road. It comes from. That was a question that I had, was since the water coming through the pipe is not, I think it potentially is just drainage from the neighborhood above. And before I assumed that it was a stream, but I'm thinking that it may just be drainage. You can kind of see here, then this leads to another, oh my gosh, it's touchscreen, I always forget. Let me show the other picture of the structure that the water. Yes.
Either you or the owner back up and give us a little more
Yes.
broad context. We're kind of jumping into the middle,
Oh,
I
yeah,
think.
sorry. So they'd like to replace this culvert that's on the access road. And it's currently just a plastic pipe, about 8 inches, would you say? An 8-inch pipe? 8 to 10 inches.
Okay.
They'd like to replace it, or put something new with that, like more comprehensive, or bigger.
Well, when you have a 20-inch pipe coming into the property, and when it rains, the water is full force, then there's nothing for quite a while. And after they put the bike path in, it's even worse, because that water doesn't seep into the ground anymore, it rushes, it's off the pavement. So it's complicated. for years, 100 years or so, that was farmed, and they just drove across it. There was nothing in the way. Now there's water. More water than ever. Every house that's built up above, surface water runs off and it flushes down there. And when it rains, you had better be to see the water, because by the time you put your coat on and drive there, it's over. I have water problems in 4 underpasses from the bike path. And the first one's right off the South Street. That's not the issue today. But that's, when that water comes out, when it rains like that, you gotta see it, and because it's over in a few seconds. Period.
So, okay,
So this is the white pipe that's kind of exposed across the road that you see when we walk down the road.
But if you look, so this is from the neighbor across.
Okay,
this seems to be like the source of the water that's then being conveyed through the pipe
I
that's
see.
along there on this road. And I took this picture and then I went up into the neighborhood, and there's a number of catch basins that and through aerial imagery, it doesn't look like it's like a continuation of a stream anymore. So it's the drainage. So I will say, right after your pipe, the white one, right after that, it goes immediately into wetlands essentially.
Correct.
So the pipe itself probably is within at least the buffer zone. I don't know where the pipe, but does if they were to put in a new crossing to convey this stormwater, would it need to be the stream crossing standards? If it's not coming from a stream? It's like this drainage. That's where I wasn't sure.
Or do people, can you put like a steel plate or a concrete cover just to not disturb it as much? I don't know what.
To not disturb the existing pipe,
Correct. To drive over it.
so that it wouldn't continue to break.
Well, no, that you wouldn't, it would just be going over it and you wouldn't be touching it and feeding it there.
Well, based on the flow of water, actually the bike path put an extra drainage into that. There's another 10-inch drain coming from the bike path into the others, into
This
the side of it.
this drain leads to the bike path, which has its own pipe, and which then leads
That
to
was-
their culvert.
That was added. Probably the best thing out of this is to give me the permission to put in a couple, the equivalent of 20 inches diameter, so 2 18-inch pipes or whatever gets the same diameter for water flow. Put it in there, and I'll do it.
And can you just clarify what's the problem being caused by the water that's coming through?
A road in is eroded.
Oh, okay.
So
Thank
now-
It's a work road. I mean, it has been for, I don't know, I've been there for 80 years. I remember when I was a kid, my grandparents farmed and hauled the hay out that way. And there was a cornfield right next to the solar line, so they pulled stuff out that way. And my father had a Christmas tree farm, and they drove everything out that way, as we did. But now it's gotten worse, and I can't, we're under public scrutiny more than ever before with the bike path people. And so we got to do it right, and that's why we're here. We want to do it right.
You have
Does-
to- yeah, go ahead.
Is the water always flowing through there, or does it start and stop?
It trickles based on that added pipe I think they put in. It will dry up, but there is, on both sides of the bike path, coming down to the lowest point where this is, there's always a trickle there. It's just,
On the side that Kathy had the picture of the caving in cement on the neighborhood side, there's always water there. We went and talked to that gentleman that owns that property. There's a trickle through, and then if you look from our side, the pipe that's under the bike path, the water has pooled right by that pipe that comes out. So that has allowed it to kind of congregate there.
Kathy, who picked up pipe in?
Which one?
This one.
The white one or the?
Yeah, white one.
I would assume they would have done a trap. You guys installed the white pipe, correct?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I had to get over it.
That was many years.
Yeah, that was years ago.
So kind of this helps give an idea. It's been getting eroded in that area, and that this is from 2021, and this is the pipe right here. You can see it. It's white and easy to see. And then when you go to aerial imagery from 2019, it's a little more covered, and it's just been getting eroded over it.
And I would like to state too, we haven't been using that road.
Much at all.
Yeah, I mean, because of that.
So it's not vehicles causing the erosion,
No.
it's something from water.
Rain
Yeah.
and water, yeah.
Like that.
Anytime it rains, I'll take anybody in my truck and we can park there as it's pouring, and you will see it. When it stops raining, you won't see anything.
And so there's a pipe here, then it goes under the bike path, comes out, and then there's the drainage that is exiting it from the neighborhood.
Okay, so,
Yeah, Main Street.
But there's the wetlands
Right,
here,
because
so it
I'm-
might be the,
right, because the wetlands right where it empties into.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I think regardless, I think we know that there's wetlands probably immediately adjacent from prior work and conversations that we've had. So I think, I mean, you're going to need a permit regardless. I don't feel comfortable from the information that we have on hand assessing whether we think this is an actual stream or if it's drainage. So I don't think we have a good answer yet to what you would need to do in terms of meeting the stream crossing standards or not. I would probably recommend that you talk to a professional wetland scientist to get some input from someone who knows the property and can really spend the time out there to make that determination. That would be your best way forward.
In regards to options for that, is that?
And determining whether it's a jurisdictional stream or not, because that is going to influence what level of requirements you would have to meet. Cassie was, I don't know if Cassie has explained to you much detail about the stream crossing standards, but if it is a real stream, then to replace a culvert, you have to meet a series of certain standards. And among those are a certain width relative to the banks of the stream. There's an openness ratio that you're supposed to achieve to allow a certain amount of light in, and that's really to facilitate the passage of things like salamanders and organisms through there.
Actually, that pamphlet.
Yeah.
So I guess, is it negated then because that was a pre-existing road for many, many years? Does that not come into any consideration?
No, anytime, I don't know if there are any agricultural exemptions that may or may not apply, but the land isn't currently in active agriculture, is it? Or
Well, I mean, there are some Christmas trees there. The only tree I gave away was to the city last year, so I can stop that if I have to. Okay.
agriculture, active agriculture usually helps you.
It's good, yeah.
But I don't know how those rules intersect with the stream crossing standards. But anytime, if the city goes out and needs to replace a culvert in one of their roads where there's been a culvert for decades, they're upheld to the same standards. It's just, these are the standards that are in place for replacements. And it does, unfortunately, make it a lot more expensive, usually and onerous, to do those replacements. So I would recommend that you get someone to look at it and determine if that's really applicable here or not.
Well, they would also help us to learn what to do to address above that thing and who they would need to contact for that situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we don't have a clearer answer for you,
Yeah.
but
So what if I don't do anything?
if you don't do anything and allow it to continue to erode,
Say again.
if you don't do anything and allow it to continue to erode,
Oh, yeah, I know. Can I put gravel or rock in there just so I can drive over it? I mean, this is, all of a sudden, my life has changed because of the bike path. And when they blasted through, they put in 4 culverts, not even talking to the people downstream. So that's me. And it doesn't make me happy. Walking off of South Street, that culvert jammed up, and you got a 20-inch culvert dumping water into a 16-inch culvert on my side, and it overflows every time it rains. But that's okay. That's a city project. I don't know. All of a sudden, this poor guy wants to do something, and it's almost impossible.
Right. I understand your frustration. One of the things that the standards now include is that anytime a culvert is replaced, you have to look at downstream impacts. So if the city were putting in another culvert carrying a stream under the bike path today, they would be required to look at what it was going to do downstream to your land. I don't know when those standards were put in place, but it may be that the bike path predates those and that some of those considerations weren't looked at. And unfortunately, that's not anything that we can do anything about now. But that is one of the things that is required as part of the process now.
So if you were to put rock or gravel on the road in the meantime to just make it drivable because of the erosion, would that be altering a wetland buffer zone?
I think we would need to look at that as an RDA
Well,
to make an
if that's
official
going to a
determination.
Wetlands area.
Right.
That whole thing is all.
Right. And it may be that that is an option and a viable one, but that would have to be presented as an RDA so we could look at it specifically to make the judgment of whether that sort of maintenance would be allowable.
And if a culvert like that is on private land and it collapses and it causes flooding, then whose responsibility is that?
That's a complicated question.
Okay, you don't have to.
There's things like emergency certifications, there's things like, depends on what it would be affected. It's a case by case thing.
Thank you for your time.
Amen.
All right, returning to agenda order. Are there any updates, Kathy, on enforcement action?
One question for, we were doing that site visit on the 17th. So far, I noticed that O'Neill, or Ted O'Neill, there's not parking cars anymore, I didn't see that. So just a little education, this is a site where they cleared an area to park cars on, it was in the buffer zone, and that was not when they were.
They're storing cars on.
They hadn't received a permit to do that. It's something that you probably can't do anyways. Anyway, so maybe you're there. But so we issued enforcement orders saying let the area revegetate, don't park cars anymore. They haven't been parking cars there, but they have been mowing still like 10, 15 feet off of the curb.
Okay.
Didn't know how much the commission felt about that mowing. That was something that I wanted to just double check, and I can show you a picture in a second.
I was looking at the older pictures compared to your picture, and it, just from what I was seeing, it looks like they may be mowing even a little farther in. So you'll have to look.
So you can see the line of the mowing. I share my screen here.
So I think the last oldest picture is September.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I kept going back and forth. So
So this is the current, it's from the 17th of this year, this month. And let's see. So yeah. That's kind of the same perspective as from above, moved in. Have to say, and they were still parking the car.
But at one point, they had cleared that whole area
All the way back.
back.
do you have the September 21?
Yeah.
because there's no vehicles.
Just say, oh, there's these vehicles here, but it's a better view for sure. So in the past, it looks like generally the commission, we didn't have anything to say about that mowing. We more, well, just the overarching mowing, but this buffer mowing. Happy to reach out to them
Because
again.
maybe that, maybe if you look back up older satellite, maybe that was always mowed.
Yeah. This is from 2021. 19, kind of.
That's when they figured the whole thing, right?
Yeah, you can see how far back there. But yeah, it looks like different type of graph over there.
But you can't go older than, with mass method, you can't go older.
There's a different tool I can use.
Yeah.
Let's see. Restore.
Google Earth will do it. That might be hard.
No, this is crazy. Yeah, this is it. Okay. Okay, so.
Man.
Now, Arizona again. Go to Arizona. There's darn cars, looks like they're, you gotta see that. Screw them. And we can keep going back. That was before they did the plan. They did it.
Does it look like they mowed 10 feet at that point in time?
Bodies for.
Yeah, I know,
Water part goes right in front of it.
of course.
This gives you enough you can trigger. Yeah, hard to say, it's the tree cover.
What if I try to look at some older aerial stuff and see if I can come up with something better than this? And see if it has any, it's been historically mowed or not. They have been very cooperative anyways, right?
They have or have not.
Have not.
They were cooperative, in that, yeah, there was concern at first when we issued the order, and then there was a change during of like the ownership.
Okay.
There was two people, and then that person left, and now that it's the one person, I would say it was quite cooperative.
Okay, now it
Since
is.
that change, yeah.
Okay.
Where are the wetlands there?
So
The bottom.
it's hard to say
Behind the
exactly, but
school.
it's kind of like, yeah, here's that one industrial, the school named Tiles, I taken the other day, or a couple meetings ago. So this is all in the buffer zone.
Yeah, around 2018, they were quite far back.
All right, any other enforcement updates?
No.
Open space updates?
Okay, I'll click Echo Dale. I haven't got an update on the questions that we had at the last meeting. One was just confirmation that it's an approved herbicide that it, oh no, sorry, it's this one grade, about the piling.
To take
of
the
the
stuff
material.
offsite, right? To take
Yeah,
the invasives
I
offsite.
just need to confirm with her whether or not that's gonna be invasive material or not. If it's not invasive material, you all sounded like you're okay with it. If it is, it should be. I'm gonna hopefully get that clarification for the next meeting. But she also was able to supply me with, an updated management plan for the invasive species, like long-term management plan, which was something that they were working on. They wanted to work on, because the old one had kind of lapsed and that like all the actions hadn't been taken in the timeline that they had originally proposed. But now that the mowing was, the preliminary mowing was completed, and they're doing the cut stem treatment, they're ready. So, she did want to hand this around. That's the new plan. But she also made a note. She said, I've only included one fall mowing task to be performed by the town/commission each year. I figured this was a hard thing to fit in, and I believe Jay did the work last year as a partial favor. I'm also considering the budget. If it's at all possible, an additional spring mow in the next couple of years would help shift the composition that much quicker. It helps suppress the woody invasives and other woody shrubs. I'm thinking the back section where you want to maintain it as a field. And keeps things low a little longer for easier foliar work. It's easier to see more of the new young plants before they can hide in the taller growth. That said, it's not necessary, but I thought I'd throw it out there in case it was feasible to squeeze in at any point. We can also perform any of the mowing tasks. Talking about Land Stewardship Inc. can perform the mowing tasks fall or spring or both at any point that the town can't do it. And she can give us a separate cost for that if we'd like.
I think between Russell and I, that we could come up with, you know, whatever we agree upon, we could make that happen.
To do the additional spring mowing.
To the spring mowing or a fall mowing this fall. As long as it's dry, that's all, because there is some wet areas. Or frozen, no care.
Yeah, so I don't know with this new updated plan, if you guys need to vote on it or what, so I just got that, I wasn't able to provide that in one meeting, so if more time to look at it, that's obviously fine.
And there's a link to it in here, I think I saw.
Yeah, there should be.
How does this change the costs, Cassie?
The mowing or the whole?
The updated plan versus the plan that we have in place? Are you done?
Good question, I can ask for a comparison,
I mean, do you have our old one to know what the cost was?
Yeah.
So is this a situation where the town is being asked to help pay for an open space update?
It's an open space property that the town owns,
Oh,
and it was previously an orchard. And so there's a bunch of these old apple trees, and then it was overcome by invasive species. So the city hired Land Stewardship Inc. to create a management plan for the invasives, and they've also completed the first treatment. So it was, which involved mowing this area, which Jay was willing to do, which was really helpful. And then they did a cut stem treatment with herbicides.
Where they inject the stem?
I believe that they probably painted them. They cut them and then paint the stems. That's my understanding. I can get those details for you if you like, but now they've prepared this updated long-term plan to kind of just guide maintenance in the future to prevent the invasives from coming back and taking them.
One of the concerns is there's these vintage apple trees that are not very special, according to Russell, who owns the orchard next door. And there's a risk of contamination from these old diseased trees getting into his orchard. And UMass warned him that something should get done to those trees to get rid of them, to reduce the possibility of damaging his orchard. So he's in favor of whatever we can do, so.
And in the future, developing more plans, like there was talk of maybe trying to form a working group to install an accessible trail or something. It's right next to where the community gardens are, so there's kind of that is in the mix too, and that needs to be determined, but it's nice to get this management underway and get that started.
We should just keep moving along with that as best we can. even without a trail plan or anything, at least get it under some better control.
Is it right next to Park Hill Orchard?
Yes, it is. So between the community garden and Park Hill Orchard, where they have the little labyrinth thing you walk around, it's right between there.
Were you able to find the original, Cassie?
Oh, I can pull it right.
One thing that I notice is different is that the original plan had performance targets, and there was some guarantee of a certain percent control, and I don't see anything of that nature anymore.
So there's multiple iterations. I have all the different ones. I'll get us, but
Yeah, so let's start with the May 4th of 2018. What was the cost on that?
total 7,400.
And there's the success criteria that used to be guaranteed, which we don't have anything like that now.
I can ask about that.
So yeah, I would like to know if there are, at the very least, what they're targeting for a success criteria, whether it's guaranteed or not, what they think they can achieve, and the total here now is 9150 compared to 7400, which is not surprising because we're several years down the road. But I don't know where that leaves us in terms of the available funding. Jay, do you have any sense?
It's 15,000.
15,000 is what we have. And what else needs to come out of that?
Tree removal,
Which has not happened.
which has not happened.
And our costs for that, when we had estimates, were,
Oh, no.
does anybody remember?
Let me see.
It was a reduced cost because the person that was going to take the trees out was going to take the wood. Not
Right,
that you're going to build anything out of the wood, but you could use it.
right.
Tree removal plan, this is from 2017,
That will be too old.
definitely too old. But it's just a picture, so it's not enough.
Those are the trees that Russell identified just as a sample of what would go and what might stay.
The orange would go.
The orange would go.
Did,
Not the trees that aren't marked, we never got to. We just kind of walked through, because you couldn't even get through the whole property. So we walked where we could walk, and then we just picked, the green ones would stay for sure. The yellows were maybes, and the orange would go. It was red, but the pictures have faded. I think it's been so long since we did this evaluation.
this is a scan from like a folder.
And was the 15,000, was that our CPA funds, or was that a combination of CPA and Concom funds?
Just CPA,
The
but I can check.
CPA.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just been
Yeah.
a while, so.
That's a lot of trees trimming.
Cassie, if you could dig up, what the cost was when we had gotten one for tree removal. I'm sure it's changed at this point. And then also dredge up wherever we have the details of what funds were set aside for this and what sources they came from. I think that will help us to make better decisions. I mean, I think we need to move forward with this, but we just need to understand also how it impacts the overall budget for the project.
And I will look into that for sure. In terms of using are you talking about using like filing fees on? I think there's rules about how you can use that. I don't know if it can be used for open space. I gotta double check.
There was definitely some pot of money
Okay.
that was available for this. I don't remember how it was divided or exactly what the source was.
Deal.
Yeah, right. And I don't think, I mean, we must have expended some amount because we've been working with land stewardship, but I don't know what's been spent and what's left.
I gotta get some second. Because we made this management plan, we never started. So they're developing this and then we're gonna pay them for this.
I said they did one.
They did something,
They did.
and I remember that we tried to pay them. And I'm not sure if we ever succeeded
Some
in
of the
paying them.
plans had changed because we were dealing
Right.
with different people.
Right.
When we originally did it.
Oh, interesting. Oh, yeah, but they did do it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good point. I'll look into it. Okay.
And in the meantime, do we need to make a decision on this? Do we need to authorize this to move forward? What's the timeline? Do you want us to do this in the spring, now?
Next couple of years. No, so they already did one mow and they're doing the treatment. So this is for long term. next fall, next spring.
Not deciding anything tonight, and this doesn't hold us up on it.
I believe that's correct.
But this includes 2022 spring, which I assume is part of the 9150 pricing. So we're on this plan already.
Oh, yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
We're on the old version of it, which included that spring treatment maybe. This is revised version.
So I can ask her to come.
That would be fantastic.
Yes, that's.
Yeah, let's see if we can make that happen, because there's just,
She's really helpful.
there's a lot of questions.
She's really good. And she's really helpful. So that's my bad. I didn't ask her to come. So
Yeah,
it's not-
let's see if we can get her to come.
Yeah.
That'd be great. All right. Compliance update. Which projects do we have to talk about?
City of Easthampton.
There's definitely at least one.
City of Easthampton for the
Which one?
letter I.
Oh, yes, Ferry Street.
Yep. Okay, so that was the thing. I don't have an update. The commission had asked to get confirmation of what, if that's an approved Riverside, the additional one they wanted to use.
Okay.
Just haven't gotten it yet.
I see,
So I just want to
okay.
highlight that I'm still working on that.
Okay.
And we'll update you all when I do, and they haven't gone forward yet.
Okay. I did notice I went by there the other day and the swallow wart is in full force.
Doing really
on
good
that
this
slope.
year.
Yeah, doing great. So we definitely want to get that treated.
It's like 3 feet tall in some places already.
What about H,
Okay.
the date coming up?
Yes, so that was something we talked about, this is for the pump house.
Mhm.
It is going to expire, but they're going to pursue a certificate of compliance. They're not seeking to extend it, so they're not beholden to that expiration date anymore. Obviously, we want to get it as close to that as possible, but, there's no additional work they need to do there, so they just need to pursue the certificate of compliance. I've been in communications with Mike Owens about that.
Okay.
Okay, the next one that I have something for is for the 410 Main Street. It was a stormwater permit only. There's no order of conditions associated with this project.
Which item is that?
This is item F, HS. And the request for consideration for a minor change, and that they'd like to increase the impervious area by 256 square feet for a concrete pad for mechanical equipment to be located in the rear. Drainage calculations, so they should still be under the peak discharge rates, and I have an official letter here. Bumpy Sparkle, who's the engineer.
We want our stormwater person to look at that.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it, but I think we're gonna want Dan to look at it as well.
The back has the calculation.
Do you know the size of the pad?
256 square
It is
feet.
too.
You said you want to add it up to 256?
I believe it will be the size of the new pad.
They have an impervious area defined.
Okay.
They want to add 250
Oh, you
square feet.
want to add
More
that?
than
Oh,
more than
okay.
their driveway and parking and all that.
Yeah.
So
So they've already been approved for everything else,
Yeah.
and now they're
Okay.
like, can we add 256 feet?
we just have to see if it meets the stormwater requirements with the new numbers. We think it would not be that close, so.
It looks like Lucky's still showing them having plenty of extra capacity. I wasn't part of this original permit. I don't know anything about the project. I don't know how I missed it, but. So I'd say based on what's presented there, it seems fine, but if we want to have Dan look at it as well, I'm fine with that.
It's up to you guys.
Is this an urgent for
What's that?
them? Is it urgent for them to get this
I
solved?
told them that, there may be questions, so that, like, I had anticipated that there's possible, like, continue the next meeting.
Okay. Let's have Dan look at it just for.
Okay.
And you better be here next time.
Yeah.
Lining them up for a lot of stuff.
It will have a permanent, mechanical thing staged on it. It's a permanent addition, yeah.
All right, so we don't need a formal motion to continue that, but we will hold off on that until next meeting.
All right, cool. Okay, and that was all I had for, I will note that I added move and storage, the order of conditions has been issued for move and storage at,
Okay.
at 9 Coleman Road / Main Street rear.
Excellent.
And
Actually, Kathy, point of clarification.
Yes.
If there's no discussion, if you were just asking Dan to review the calculations and weigh in, can you do that outside of an open meeting?
It may not be something we'd even make a motion for anybody. So we would just say,
Right.
yeah, this looks like it's fine. And
it's for the city stormwater permit. So what I often will do, just so like sometimes people want more of like a record or something that looks official, I'll issue like a memorandum and it just says, at this meeting, the commission voted to determine that this was a minor change and no additional, permitting is required. So you guys could say, I guess someone potentially could make a motion to approve it, on the conditional approval from Dan Patrick.
fine
Is
with
that
that.
weird? Like,
I don't know, we've never quite done that before. So
Yeah.
maybe we should just kick it down to the 13th.
Yeah, okay.
it's an interesting point though. Okay, and then, trying to think of anything else noted. I've got the first few building permits for the units, just some of the units at the Loudville development. This is item L. And I don't have highlighted just because they've already met all their pre-construction requirements. They did include a condition in that order saying that we have the right to require a pre-construction meeting all over again each time there's a unit, because we didn't know when each unit would be built. These are quite soon after I just did the
Okay.
pre-construction unit, and I conducted a site visit anyways
Sure.
and talked to them about it, and looked at where they were going to be. It looks good, so my plan is to issue a building permit for those units.
We had some professional tree removers there.
Yeah, definitely.
I did notice that the house that's just in front of that site is for sale,
That
Okay.
is it.
which did not surprise me.
Okay, cool. That is, I don't know if anyone has any other questions about any other ongoing projects. Otherwise, that's it for me, and we can move on.
Nope. So on to general business. Do we have meeting minutes to approve? Or accept, that's the new terminology, maybe.
I don't have them
Have they
printed,
been
but I sent them to
reviewed?
y'all.
Okay.
I
Have you
sent them
sent your
digitally. I don't have it
corrections?
printed.
Yes, all right.
Unless it's in the.
Outside.
Never corrects all our
Thank you.
grammar
If you
grammar on our
have
minute.
Feel free to reach out to me.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, thanks.
Do we have any motions regarding the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from 5/9/2022.
A second.
All those in favor, roll call vote. Weeks?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
You guys are jumping the gun.
Jeez.
All right. I'll, motion carries.
Yes.
Deborah. All right. Anything we need to discuss relative to hybrid meetings? Do we have the system down now?
It feels good to me.
Are people
I'd
able to
like
hear?
In theory, yes. I haven't had any complaints.
People can hear us.
Yeah, it might change.
We
I'm
going
gonna
back
talk
to
to-
masks?
Well, that's up to you
We'll
at
see.
this stage. But I'm gonna talk to Karen tomorrow about potentially using new technology that might make it even better. But hopefully, again, should not impact y'all at all. So, great.
They don't take meetings in the big room?
They do, yeah, they do.
City
have a
council
business,
has to be up there.
Yeah, they do them up there. I leave something in the past up there if it's like a wicked big item that has a ton of public attendees, but.
They have nice chairs up
Yeah, nice. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor? Weeks?
Aye.
Carr?
Aye.
August?
Aye.
Whittemore?
there. Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Motion carries. It is 7:53, and I will now adjourn the May 23rd meeting. Our next meeting is June 13th at 6 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.